video. If you haven't guessed it, watching the last video, this one is going to be about fixing up our class, which obviously broke down on the way from Toronto to California when we were towing the 55 ASL. But now finally our overnight parts from Japan have finally arrived from Amazon Prime. But yeah, it's finally time to open up this box, see what's inside it. We're going to be replacing the bags, the pump, basically everything for the airmatic suspension so that it doesn't give us trouble anymore. So I guess this is the pump that we're going to be putting on. Well, it says made in China. That's definitely not a good thing to see. But anyways, this is what you get from Amazon overnight shipping. We did have to get everything really quickly because we do have to fix this car because right in literally 1 day from now we have to take this car to Willow Springs Raceway for like a track day. That's why we definitely didn't have too much time to wait for parts. We just ordered whatever was available for overnight shipping. Well, not overnight shipping, like 1 day shipping or whatever it was. So yeah, this is the air compressor that I guess we're going to be using, and yeah, as far as it works, I don't really care about it as far as it gets us to...
The main thing is that we did order R-Knot bags, which have a lifetime warranty, and everywhere I've heard, R-Knot is the best replacement for air suspension. So we're going to install them and we're going to let you guys know what we think about R-Knot and how it works for this application.
So with very little time on our hands, we decided to get straight to work. Now we did have to do all this in a hotel parking lot because, well, first of all, the air suspension had failed completely by the time we got here. The air pump was not working anymore and the car, it was sagged down all the way, so it wasn't even safe to drive the car anywhere. So we just ordered all the parts at the hotel and we decided to do all this in the hotel parking lot, literally. We started off by replacing the air compressor. Now the air compressor is located right in front of the front tire, so to access it you have to remove the fender liner. The fender liner is held in place by a couple of 10mm hex bolts and a few plastic clips. Once they're removed, the fender liner moves out of the way and the air compressor is actually located right in front of it. For removing the air compressor, there's two electrical connectors that need to be removed. After this, there's two air lines. One is a pressure line that sends pressurized air to the airbags at the back, and the other one is the air line where the pump actually sucks air from. Both these lines need to be removed. And after that, there's just three 10mm hex bolts that are holding the air compressor in place. After the old air compressor was out of the way and thrown in the garbage, it was time to install the new air compressor. So installing the new one was pretty much the reverse process of how we removed it. We just had to hold it in place and tighten those 10mm mounting bolts. Next we have to put the air lines in place. Now for the pressure line, you just have to put it in the place where it needs to be mounted and then pull it outwards, and that's literally all you have to do. It just seals itself. And for the inlet, there's just a clip that holds it in place, so it's actually really easy to change this pump. It literally took us like 10 minutes doing all of this. And once the pump was mounted in place, all we had to do was reinstall the fender liner and then finally reinstall the wheel and tighten everything. Once all the work at the front was finished, it was on to the back for replacing the airbags. Now luckily this car only has air suspension on the rear wheels. Some other models of the R class have air suspension on all four wheels. So in that case, if the bags on the front were also leaking, then we would have had to do that as well. But luckily for this one, it was only the rear bags that needed to be replaced. Now this car obviously had been in the hands of some stupid mechanic that tightened these lug nuts way too much, because usually they shouldn't be this hard to remove. This is exactly how you break lug nuts when someone torques them so much with an impact gun or something, and then they're so difficult to remove. But anyways, with a bit of effort and with a bit of WD-40, I was able to remove all the lug nuts. I just removed one of the rear wheels from the car, and this is the, well, rear right wheel. And here's a look at the airbag. This is the thing that is supposed to keep the air suspension up. It's an air spring. But yeah, first thing you'll notice is that there's a lot of cracks on the spring, and also the air spring is actually flopped over to the side. This mount is actually supposed to go on this thing. I'm not sure whether this happened when I was jacking up the car right now, because the air spring was not fully inflated. So yeah, that could just be because I jacked the car up on an uninflated air spring and that flopped over to the side. But anyways, removing the air spring is fairly easy. All you need to do is there's only one air line somewhere around the air spring. I'm not sure where it is. I think it's on the other side. Once you remove that air line, this air spring is going to be deflated. And once it's deflated, obviously you can just compress it and take it out. But I believe the problem why this car was sagging down was definitely down to the air spring itself, because you can see these cracks right over here on the air spring. So I believe there was a bit of an intermittent leak going on. Sometimes this air spring would leak, other times it wouldn't leak, which is why sometimes the car would work fine and other times it wouldn't work fine. But anyways, once these springs are replaced, hopefully there should be no other problems with the airmatic system. While I was waiting for the new air springs to arrive, I also got to work on replacing the wheel speed sensor, because that was the other thing that had broken down. For removing this is really simple. There's just one Torx bolt that's holding it in place. You just need to remove that and then the wheel speed sensor just comes out. Here's the funny part. Right when I was removing this wheel speed sensor, this airbag has randomly started leaking again. Now you can see this hissing sounds coming from this airbag. So yeah, that's definitely an intermittent leak. So it didn't leak for such a long time when I had the wheel removed and everything, and now it's randomly started leaking again. So yeah, I believe this was the issue that was actually going on the highway, why the car would randomly sag down. It's a really weird thing why it doesn't leak all the time, why it only leaks some of the time, but yeah, who knows. And almost in perfect time, the second Amazon Prime package also arrived. This was the R0 air springs. Now for removing the old air springs, it was really easy. All we had to do was use a chisel and pry these old air springs out of where they were mounted. Since the air springs had already deflated themselves for us, we didn't really have to do too much work, but usually you'll have to remove the airline that is at the back. Once you remove the airline, the air spring would basically deflate itself and then you'll be able to remove it. Once the old air springs were out of the way, it was the same process for installing the new ones, just putting them in place, just making sure that they were oriented properly. And once the air springs were mounted properly, next all we had to do was connect the airline at the back. It's the same process as how the airline goes in the air compressor. You just have to put the airline in and then pull it outwards, and then it just locks itself in place. Once everything was done for one side, all we had to do was do the exact same thing for the other side, and that was literally everything for the air suspension. After everything was done, there was one last thing to do, to start up the car and hope that it actually goes up this time. Now with the whole air suspension issue out of the way, we thought what better use for the old crappy Mercedes airbags than to have a throwing contest and see who can throw the crappy Mercedes airbag the farthest. Here's a look at the car after leaving it standing overnight, and now you can see that the car is sitting perfectly level even with the trailer attached. Now a couple of comments in the previous video said that the suspension issue was down to the trailer, but I don't think it was down to the trailer. The trailer only weighs less than 3,500 pounds, so it can't damage anything. Literally any car can tow that much. So it's within the tow capacity of the car. The tongue weight is within the tongue weight rating of the car, so that shouldn't be doing any damage to the air suspension. But anyways, yeah, with the new bags, with the sensor replaced, now all the lights from the dash are gone. The car drives and runs normally like it should. That's actually not the end of the story, because while we were doing all these repairs, we did find out a couple of other things that we also need to fix. One thing is that the rear right tire on the car, that tire was all cracked up when we took it apart. It's literally on the last leg. It can burst any time, so that's another thing we'll have to replace. We'll have to replace both these rear tires. The date on the tire was actually 2006, so it's actually even older than the car. So yeah, that's definitely someone that literally took off the tire and put on an older tire. But yeah, this is going to be everything for this video. Now you know that if your air suspension breaks down, at least you can replace it outside your hotel room. But anyways, yeah, this is everything for this video. See you guys in the next one.